Good afternoon, friends. Let me commence this video on a slightly philosophical note. When we see real flowers and artificial flowers from a distance, they look exactly similar to us. However, the difference between the two is the feel and the fragrance of real flowers, which the artificial flowers cannot match. So in today's video, we shall be discussing about the difference between preconceived and coached thoughts and that of original ideas that you express in your psychological tests. So we will begin with the TAT. Now in TAT, let's hypothetically assume that there is a picture of a busy marketplace where a person on a motorcycle, a youngster, is sitting with a lady or a girl behind him and a young child in front of them sitting on the tank of the motorbike, and they are driving through this busy marketplace. Now, a typical preconceived or a coached idea would be the moment you see a busy marketplace, the thought that would come to a coached mind would be to create a story about traffic awareness, and this person is not wearing a helmet. So you feel that it is all about managing traffic or awareing people about traffic rules, etc. Now, if you or otherwise, the story would be something like, cleaning up the area, or because there is a lot of congestion and there's a lot of filth which is seen in the picture. So immediately the idea of an NGO coming and cleaning up the area, or something to do with let's say slum dwellers and someone to improve their living conditions, etc., etc. So these are preconceived ideas, because these ideas you will find in most SSB books and in many stories that people write on social media, without even applying their own mind, without even putting themselves into that frame. And those stories do not show you as a person. So they are nice stories, but they are like artificial flowers because they do not have your fragrance. Now, let's say if you are a person who's a caring kind of a person who feels for other people. Let's say if you could be either if you are a male, you could be the male as your main character, or you could choose the lady or the girl as your main character if you were a female. So you could perhaps be working in a company or at your workplace. Let's say there is an Aya who makes tea over there, or does housekeeping over there, and she is a single mother who gets her little child along to the workplace, and you, after interacting with that boy, feel that there is a lot of potential and that boy is very smart and interactive. So you feel that I should do something about it, and you take on the responsibility of educating that child and admitting that child to the school. So perhaps in this picture, this person, along with the other colleague who also decided to contribute, are going to the market to buy books and uniform for this child whom they have admitted in the school. So now this is showing some of your values, the kind of person that you are, that you're kind-hearted and you can feel for other people and you understand your social obligations in the society. So that is what the story represents. So similarly, a picture where there is an accident shown, a typical story which would be written by a preconceived mind would be that of providing first aid and evacuating people to the hospital, etc., etc. So once again, this is a story which everybody will write. So can you think a little differently and ask yourself what else can be done here? Perhaps if you look at it a little differently, you could be a person who could reform or make certain reforms so that accidents in that area do not happen in future. So you could apply your mind and see who could you be. So like that, the stories where your values are seen, those kind of stories are much better. A story about organizing a picnic, where you are like a parrot writing down, he booked tickets, he organized the administrative staff, he carried so and so with him. So all of these are very, very bookish. So, if you would like to add your own fragrance into it, you could talk about something that you would have exclusively done if you would have organized that event, maybe some kind of party games, or maybe some kind of a bonding activity where these people who have gone out, they gelled very well and they kind of interacted very nicely, so that their productivity even at work or otherwise wherever that they lived, because of better social interactions, their life became better, or they became more productive or helpful to one another. So any such stories where your values are visible will actually reflect the kind of person that you are. So please understand that it is not the story which is important. There are no right or wrong stories. But through the story, the kind of person that you represent, that is what is of essence. Now, same goes for WAT sentences. Most preconceived ideas are where you would simply write a statement of fact. For example, the word is courage, and you will say, soldiers fight courageously. Now, this is simply a statement of fact, and it is not showing any of your values. Now, same sentence, if you would say that courage of conviction defines moral strength, now it shows some values of this person who has written this sentence. Similarly, the next mistake is that many times the sentences that you make, they are contradictory or they're conflicting with one another. The thought process is conflicting. For example, a sentence to say that open communications, open channels of communication help in better neighborly relations, or it forges better neighborly relations. Now, this is actually a statement which is correct by itself. Now, if you make another sentence where you say that diplomatic isolation of Pakistan is in India's interest. Now, although this statement by itself again is correct independently, but there is a conflict in the thought process if you look at both. In the first, you are saying that if lines of communication are open, naturally there'll be better neighborly relations. Whereas in the other one, you're talking about isolating Pakistan, which will be in the interest of India. So these two statements are actually contradictory, although independently they are both correct. So you have to understand that the thought process that you exhibit have to be similar, or the essence of the same should be such that you do not contradict yourself. Now, the next thing is that many times, the SRTs that you write, once again, there are, contradictions in that, or you're not consistent in that. For example, if there are two similar SRTs, there are reason for giving you similar SRTs. Like, for example, there is an SRT to say that you want to join or your father wants you to join the armed forces and you want to become an engineer. And another one says that you want to marry a poor educated girl, whereas your father wants you to marry a rich, uneducated girl. Now, in both these cases, the essence of your answer should remain the same. It should not happen that in one you have convinced your father and in the other one you got convinced. So what I mean by saying here is that if you were to give the first response to say that he explained to father his compassion for aeronautical engineering and promised him to join Air Force after doing BTech. So you have made a statement where you are convincing your father with a particular logic. Now, in the other one, similarly, if you say that convinced father by explaining to him the value of compatibility in relations, especially in marriage relations, and explain to him that money can always be earned in life if one is educated and intelligent. Now, in both these cases, you have given a consistent answer rather than an inconsistent one. Same happens in the SD also. In fact, in the SD, another point which you need to keep in mind, that a lot of people practice their SD and their blank story, and they write that by heart, and because they're by hearted that, they write it in a flawless manner. It is written in Queen's English, whereas the rest of their dossier is actually written in English. So now when you do that, naturally the psych gets to know that this is simply something that you've copied from somewhere, or you've practiced and rehearsed and put it there. This is not your impromptu response. So what you write there should be from your mind, and it should be written in a manner which is comparable with what you've written in the rest of the dossier. Now, another mistake which candidates make in the SD is that they contradict their own statements. Like, for example, in under the heading of parents, you have written that my parents tell me that I can perform even better than this in my sports and my academics if I manage my time a little better. So you've given this area of improvement, whereas in your own, under your own heading, opinion about yourself, you have mentioned that that you are very, very meticulous about planning things, and you make sure that you always meet deadlines. So these two statements now become contradictory and they become conflicting. So that is how the assessor gets to know that this is a preconceived thought. So please keep these points in mind, because I find that a lot of candidates, rather than understanding why these tests are being conducted, they tend to kind of by heart some stories, or remember or practice sentences, and then they write it over there without understanding how it will reveal you as a person, and make sure that there is consistency in the responses that you give. Thank you. All the best.